We are here for the meeting of the foreign ministers of BRICS countries, and we have the Sherpa meeting this morning, so I would like to, on behalf of the DG and myself, welcome you warmly to this meeting and now call upon Director General Mohai to make formal opening statements.
It is indeed my sincere honor to once again welcome you to South Africa for the third Brics Sherpa and SOUS Sherpa meeting and the auspices of our country's chairship. We are now truly into the final stretch, as you will probably know, just before the summit. It's now, we can feel it, with events and activities increasing in pace and intensity as we move ever closer to the end of July. As you are aware, this coming Monday, the 4th, our ministers will participate in the second formal meeting of the BRICS Foreign Affairs International Relations. This is directly preceded by the welcome dinner that will be hosted by our Minister Lindiwe Sisulu, which is going to take place tomorrow evening. We're looking forward to that moment. Of course, the main focus of our agenda over the next 2 days is thus to finalize the BRICS Foreign Ministers' media statement. Our aim is to ensure that consensus is reached during our deliberations while simultaneously capturing and conveying the core tenets of the issues as contained in the draft text before us. Our interactions over the next 2 days will also enable us to comprehensively brief our respective principals ahead of their meeting on Monday. In the past decade, the BRICS Forum has evolved and expanded its mandate beyond the initial economic focus and focus that brought us together to include, among others, political, security, social, and other relevant matters. In the global political security arena, the ministers will certainly discuss the instability in the Middle East region, specifically in relation to the recent, the Israel-Palestine situation, as well as the crisis in Syria, Yemen, and the unfolding catastrophes in Afghanistan. There is also the matter of international terrorism and the countering thereof. And linked to all this is the emphasis that BRICS places on multilateralism and the centrality of the UN and its bodies to the reform of the latter notwithstanding. As we turn to the economic and people-to-people aspects of our awesome BRICS, we will once again raise the importance of multilateralism, albeit in the sense of international trade and the centrality of the WTO. The importance of this cannot be overstated in the light of rising unilateralism and protectionism. This furthermore links up with BRICS commitments on these issues and how it is highlighted through our work and initiatives undertaken through the BRICS Africa Outreach and the BRICS Plus initiative. As the BRICS, we are also occupied in finding ways to fight climate change and to maintain sustainable development as central to the development agenda. At the same time, we have to find ways to mitigate the challenges of the fourth industrial revolution and to maximize on the opportunities that this presents to us. Colleagues, as we jointly move forward, I cannot emphasize enough the importance of the work which you perform in the context of our BRICS Forum. Your vigorous engagement and exchanges sets the groundwork for the discussions amongst our leaders and is an essential consensus-oriented foundation for the decisions that our ministers and our principals take and endorse. I should at this time wish you fruitful deliberations, and I trust that the document that will come out of this meeting will be a reflection of the collective vision and objectives of all our partners.
To South Africa, it's a pleasure to be here among BRICS friends once again, this time in this Sherpa meeting. I'd like to first take the opportunity to salute Director General Mohwai, who has indicated the steps forward, and it's clear that the main task that we have ahead is to prepare the statement that will be adopted by our ministerial authorities on Monday. It may be challenging, but finding common ground has been the very essence of the dynamics since the beginning. This has been made easier by the hard work of the South African government. I would also like to take the opportunity to salute you and his team for all his endeavors. Thank you for that. I am confident that under the leadership of Nilso Clau and with the commitment of all of us, we'll be able to reach in a reasonable time a result that will be both relevant and balanced. The contributions sent by Brazil were oriented by this purpose. In this context, it's only appropriate that the negotiations be carried out by experts. Our SOUS Sherpa, Kenneth Danobriga, was hoping to be here amongst us. He already had his air ticket, but he has been strongly advised or urged by his doctor not to take a long flight at this moment, but we are all hoping that he will be able to join us in the Joburg summit. In his stead, next to me, I have Letícia Frazão, who you all know. She is head of the BRICS division in the Brazilian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Not only she's known by all of you from previous meetings, but she will now be leading this process on the Brazilian side as acting Sherpa for all the purpose of the negotiation ahead of us. She has the background information, the corresponding instructions, and the full confidence of the Brazilian senior officials, including the minister himself, to carry out this task ahead of us. Well, with your indulgence, I'd like then to ask her to take the floor and proceed with her preliminary considerations.
Try to use this one. Well, thank you very much, Ambassador, for the welcome, and thank you, Ambassador Nedilson, for the kind words. I have just very brief preliminary comments, which I believe are due, because Brazil was a bit more prolific than Russia and China in our comments. But we try to make clear that the idea was not to add too much language that will make things, negotiations difficult. The idea was really to try to find some balance to the text. So, of course, you notice that we merged 3 paragraphs on Afghanistan, for instance, while preserving the same content. We did the same with Syria. We also added language onto hotspots that are really hot at the moment. Of course, North Korea and the JCPOA. We made text suggestions on the multilateral trading system and environment in the same line with our Chinese colleagues. We also try to avoid naming specific countries, and we try to incorporate other suggestions by other countries. Actually, we did that with some of Russia's suggestions. We did not have the time, unfortunately, to incorporate the language from China because we only received it at a later moment, so we already had sent our internal comments to our leaders for internal approval, but we will be glad to incorporate as much as we can. Just this brief comment, and to say that I look forward to working with you. We'll certainly have a very productive meeting. Thank you.
In this extremely impressive Oliver Tambo building of the DIRCO, our appreciation goes to DG Mahwai, Ambassador Suklal, and the whole BRICS team of the South African chairship for the extensive work, energetic work in preparation for the summit, the preparation of this meeting of the foreign ministers and external relations of the BRICS countries, which we are sure will send a strong message in support of the multilateral system of political and economic affairs on the global stage. We appreciate a very good basis provided for our work in the draft zero circulated by the South African chairship. Appreciate the inputs by Brazil, China, which enriched in the text. We provided our ideas. We are ready to work in order to have a good text that will send a strong message of unity, strategic partnership of BRICS countries, the staunch support by BRICS of the positive agenda in the global affairs, in the interest of the global stability based on the central role of the UN, a rejection of protectionism and unilateral measures contrary to the international law, support for strong adherence to the UN Charter and international law, international relations, including the sovereign equality of states and non-interference into internal affairs. We think that this message from the ministers will reaffirm our strong positions on common positions on a number of important issues, including such an important area of nowadays of the modern development on the security and the use of ICTs. We are sure that, led by the able hand of Ambassador Suklal, we will be succeeding and in following the strict timetable that he advised us to follow. Thank you.
Also a very humbling experience yet again in this great country, in this great land, that I think the Lord was generous to grant you the leaders which otherwise it grants other countries, other communities and societies once in 100 years. And we are not even introduced. Today again we are sitting at a location which reverberates with the names of Oliver Tambo, the great names, who should be the forefathers of the vocation of diplomacy, which they conducted in difficult times, which we conduct in comfortable times. And I think there is a great learning, a cross-learning in these times when we call something crisis. Perhaps it's a sobering reminder to think of the times in which they conducted diplomacy and what were the challenges before them, and then what we call crisis today. Having said that, I think, again, 1 year is a long time in the conduct of global affairs, and all the more in the times that we are facing. And I would like to here bring to this August gathering the recent meeting of G20 foreign ministers, where many of us were present too. And one does get a distinct sense that there is a global concern and there's a global consensus, and I think we heard it all from our friends around the room: unilateralism, protectionism, the need to preserve the multilateral order, rule-based international order, how to bring people at the center of what we do and our work relevant to the people, the governance in the name of people, and also I think There were great observations related to global governance, and I think it's an opportunity and a challenge for BRICS. It's an opportunity in terms of which have had our opportunities right from beginning as a global stabilizer, be it a social, economic, or political, and also as a provider of global growth, expansion of growth, the voice of sobriety, the voice of moderation in terms of multilateralism, centrality of WTO that our friends from Brazil brought to fore. And also challenge I sensed in the, which we have been discussing in our meetings here during the last 3-4 years, but somewhere I get a sense that now the global urge for the reform of global governance is getting a little ahead of us. I do see that in BRICS, perhaps we are not able to lay that emphasis on the reform of global governance, the echoes of which we heard at the Buenos Aires Foreign Ministers meeting. And to realize that a number of delegations, honorable ministers, were very, very categorical. Yes, centrality of UN is something that we have spoken of, but I think there were a number of countries and the leaders who very eloquently laid out the details of that centrality. I recall Germany saying there that if multilateralism has to be the order of the day, then UN, and if UN has to be at the heart of it, then we need a reformed and well-resourced United Nations. Now, when I say the challenge for BRICS, I guess the challenge for us is that when we consider ourselves at the forefront of global stability and global governance and reform and multilateralism, perhaps we will have to keep pace with the times and the global sentiments. The purpose of our gathering, Chair, here, thanks to you and Anil for a very smooth work procedure of sharing of documents and pre-meeting consultations. You have a good document. We are delighted that our foreign ministers will have their second standalone meeting in Pretoria. They will have dedicated time to think as BRICS ministers and contemplate on the global situation and come out with an outcome document which is reflective of our collective understanding of the affair, the common grounds that we are able to capture.
On behalf of China, the heartfelt appreciation for the great efforts made by South Africa in leading the BRICS in deepening our cooperation in the field of not only politics, but also economics, culture, and many other areas. And we also appreciate the efforts and the achievement made under your able leadership in the preparation for the Leaders Summit. We are very close to the summit, and we are very glad to see that progress are really being made, and we have laid a very solid foundation for the Leaders Summit, and we are very much confident in having a fruitful and productive summit in Johannesburg in late July. The Foreign Ministers meeting is a very important step in the preparation for the Leaders Summit. This meeting is taking place, is taking place at a very critical stage while the world is undergoing profound changes. Some people say we are having the most profound and the most unprecedented changes in the world we have ever seen in the past decades. Thus, it's the responsibility and the mandate of the foreign ministers to demonstrate the great role, the constructive role played by the BRICS in promoting global peace, maintaining global peace, and promoting common development in the world. Especially, we think it's time for BRICS foreign ministers to have a clear and a strong voice in promoting multilateralism, fighting against protectionism, and advancing an open, inclusive, and interconnected global economy. I think that's really something we need badly at this moment. And it's also a good time for the BRICS to demonstrate our unity, solidarity, with win-win cooperation purpose, and that's really the core of the spirit of the BRICS. While we are seeing positive recoveries of the global economy, it's also true that the BRICS, together with some other developing countries, are also suffering the negative spillovers arising from the normalization of the unconventional policies adopted by some other advanced economies. So we think at this stage, BRICS really need to demonstrate solidarity and to uphold the spirit of cooperation and a win-win cooperation. And we also hope that the Foreign Ministers' meeting will further facilitate our practical cooperation in the field of both political security and economics, especially in the implementation of the 2030 agenda, especially the implementation in this very continent. We thank South Africa for incorporating and integrating the 2030 agenda into the development of South Africa, especially by advancing Africans' industrialization. We do take that as a great design in this year's summit. So we are very much ready to give our support to that, including the establishment of a vaccine center. I think that's very much needed in this continent, and especially while we are seeing the outbreak of some new disease, infectious disease in this continent. We hope we do have some tangible result on that. With regard to the final document to be adopted by the foreign ministers, we appreciate South Africa for your contribution in preparing the draft statement. We are in general in favor of that. We have no fundamental difficulties with that. Meanwhile, we have also presented some additional elements which we do not think are very much controversial to other colleagues. It's simply demonstrated the general willingness in creating an environment which is beneficial for all of us in this changing world. And in general, based on the past practice of previous foreign ministers' meetings and other meetings, we, especially taking into account the fact that this foreign ministers' meeting is only 1 month, a little bit more than 1 month before our leaders' summit, we should avoid the risk of diluting what our leaders will say 1 month later. So we strongly prefer that this document be focused, not go into too much details in specific areas. And we also hope that we should try our best to avoid entering into lengthy and heated debate on controversial issues. You know, of course, we have every right to deliberate on what we want to say, but we have to remind ourselves that this is only a 1 day's foreign ministers meeting. We have a lot of other forums dealing with those specific issues. So we know what will be the result, and with better spending too much time on those controversial issues. without having a satisfied result. But in short, we are very much confident in the leadership of Ambassador Suklar and DG Mohai and the South African government. So we are very much supportive to the efforts to be made by South Africa in this regard. And thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you very much for your statement and your support. Let me thank all of the colleagues for your statement. This brings to a close the opening session. We will have a short break. We will proceed first for the family photograph.